Hello, kia ora, g'day. I'm Philip Duncan from Weather Watch TV on YouTube with your Australia-only 7-day forecast. Let's get into the forecast because we've got a lot of windy weather on the way, mostly for the southern states, the southern coastlines of Australia, and further to the north, there's not a lot happening. So if I'm not talking about you in the whole top half of Australia, please forgive me, but we are going to be mentioning some of the temperature changes in the north, but there's not a lot of other weather going on. Most of it, as you'll see, is around the south of Australia, the Southern Ocean down towards Antarctica, and obviously from Western Australia over to Tasmania. As you see here on the wind map, this low pressure zone, quite a big one, down towards the southern part of Western Australia. More rain, especially from about Perth southwards. Then you've got the windy northerly ahead of it, pushing through South Australia, and later on that will come into Victoria. But for now, windy westerlies are around Victoria, especially through Bass Strait and into Tasmania, and further to the north, we've still got this very light easterly flow pushing into Queensland and a little bit into the Northern Territory and the northern part of Western Australia. So here is Friday, lunchtime, or sort of more towards the afternoon if you're on the eastern side here. Northerly winds or northwesterly winds coming down into Victoria, so your temperatures will be lifting up as a result of that. You'll notice the overnight temperatures not as low as well. Still mostly dry, I'm sorry to say, for many of you, but a few showers here just in the coastal parts between South Australia and Victoria, and we've got rain over on the western half of Tasmania. In Western Australia, from about Port Hedland southwards, we're seeing showers, not a huge amount. Most of them are down here in the very southwestern corner, places like Margaret River. Into Saturday, and speaking of Margaret River, some rain here coming through for you. Windy, cold southwesterlies coming into the bottom half of Western Australia, forgive me. And around South Australia, just a few isolated showers. You can see a thin line of them through there. That won't be doing very much at all. That goes into New South Wales. The further south you are in New South Wales, towards the ACT, but mostly towards the Murray River and getting down towards Victoria, that's where you'll be noticing a bit more showery weather. Still not a huge amount. The pale blues that you see in there, just a few millimetres up to maybe several millimetres. The only real rain on the map here, apart from the rain over here in Western Australia, is over in the northern half of Tasmania, and a little bit more also actually coming into the southern half as well. The winds here are a little messy. They're coming in as a northerly and curving around. Not sure how much you'll really get there in Hobart. And further up around Queensland, easterly winds, just a couple of showers, mostly in the far north of Queensland around Cairns. Sunday, a bit more wet weather in the south now. Not a huge amount. This is high pressure over towards Australia. It's missing the H for some reason, but that is high pressure. So there are showers trapped under that for that southwestern corner of Western Australia, but the totals won't be very much. And again, South Australia over towards New South Wales and parts of Victoria and also the ACT, getting showers, but again, the pale blue, a few millimetres to several millimetres. It's not a huge amount. Down around Tasmania, a little bit more in that northwestern corner. Otherwise, again, just a few easterly winds, a few showers in the easterly winds up there for Queensland, and nothing for the Northern Territory. Maybe a shower around Darwin, maybe. And then we go into Monday of next week. Now we see some proper rain coming into New South Wales, the ACT, Victoria. It is not as widespread as some of you might want, but still some rain coming back in again. And for the more populated places like Sydney, for example, not a huge amount of rain coming through for you on Monday. Maybe a bit later on, it might pick up a wee bit more. Most of the wet weather is around Tasmania, up towards Victoria, especially around Melbourne and around the southern coastlines there. So moving through next week, there is a big storm down towards Antarctica. I'll show you in a couple more maps. But that is the reason why you're seeing all of these big, strong, windy westerlies. Severe gale around Bass Strait in Tasmania. Gale force winds from Port Lincoln to Kangaroo Island towards Phillip Island and Bass Strait. So that's the windy stuff over there. Over towards Western Australia, the southern corner, sees a little bit of showery weather, nothing too major in there. In fact, there's high pressure out there in the Indian Ocean starting to move in. And again, more showers for the northern part of Queensland and nothing for the Northern Territories and nothing going on for the top part of Western Australia. But I've got to point out for those of you over here in Western Australia, these easterly winds pick up a little bit more on Tuesday. You'll feel a little bit more warmth and a little bit more humidity coming back into that. And that warmth and humidity, well, not necessarily humidity because once you're into the desert that disappears, but that warmer sort of thick, what we call thicker air, because it does have more moisture in it. That's what makes it more humid up here. That drifts down further down the western side of Australia. So you might notice a bit more heat in the mix there, but at the same time, this is a windy south to southwesterly coming in. But look at this map and this gigantic storm down here next to Antarctica over the Southern Ocean. We've seen air pressure forecast getting it down to 916 hectopascals. At the moment here on Wednesday, 931, directly south of Tasmania. But it's a long way south of Tasmania. We're talking 2,500 kilometres south of you. But the storm is so big, unlike a tropical cyclone where it's all tight in the middle, these cold storms, the centre gets sort of bigger and wider, and so the gale force winds go further and further afield. And that's why we're seeing gale force winds potentially brushing the southern coastline of Western Australia, but more so brushing Bass Strait and Tasmania and maybe Victoria. Then it heads on over towards New Zealand as a very windy setup. And it doesn't change across next week. We get to Thursday. Now you've got a colder southerly coming in here for parts of Western Australia, but elsewhere, severe gale westerlies carry on from the coastal parts of South Australia through into the coastal parts of Victoria and down across Tasmania. Tasmania clearly in the thick of that for next week. So there's a fair bit going on, but most of it is south of Australia. There is not a lot actually happening over the continent itself, which is why this week's just a little bit harder to sort of drill down a bit deeper on a more local basis. Let's have a look now at your next 7 days rainfall. And like I say, because there's not much actually over the top of Australia, you're not seeing huge amounts of rain. But the positives are rain here in the southwestern corner of Western Australia. It goes all the way up to Port Hedland, but most of it is from Perth southwards and then over sort of towards Albany, maybe getting to Esperance. On the other side, it is the southeastern corner of South Australia, Mount Gambier, for example, Millicent, as we talked about last week, and over towards Victoria, where you might start to see 20, 30 millimetres and some higher rainfall totals up against the hills and ranges. So there is a chance of some better rain, but most of that rain falling on the west coast of Tasmania, about 100 millimetres on the way for you, and then the other area getting some rain, a little bit up there around Queensland and the coastal areas. Otherwise, there really isn't a lot to talk about over the next few days, but that storm next week down towards Antarctica, that is going to drive this spring-like westerly along the southern coastlines around Australia, because there is more than one coastline, believe it or not. I mean, all the little islands and the inlets and the bays. So plenty of windy weather coming for you. Elsewhere, it's certainly getting a bit quieter. But I think as we go through the next couple of months, we'll start to see a little more life appearing up here. You can already see the tropical rain hovering just to the north. Well, as we go through the next few months, that starts to lower down, and that will make things a little more interesting for our northern viewers. That's all from me for today. Thanks for all the comments on YouTube. Sorry I screwed up last week. Albury. It's very hard getting, the English names are harder than the Aborigine names in my mind. So we'll try and figure them out a bit more. But thank you for your very kind comments about my struggles with some of your Australian place names. That's all from me for today. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday next week.